Hello and welcome back to my How to Start a Megabase series. Today we're going to talk about legendary uranium. It's relatively difficult to get and very important for the late game, but luckily it's only needed in moderate numbers. There are three main use cases for legendary uranium. First, it's required for legendary uranium fuel cells, and those are only needed for portable fission reactors, which are not only used in equipment grids, but are also ingredients for the legendary Spidertron recipe. Second, legendary uranium is needed for legendary biolabs, one of the most important items in any megabase. And lastly, it's needed for legendary captive biter spawners. All of the above require some amount of legendary U-235, but only the fuel cells require U-238. I assume that you already know how to mine and process uranium, so I'll just mention a few things that are noteworthy with regard to upcycling. First, we can see that uranium ore has a mining time of 200%. This, of course, also affects miners with quality modules, rendering them less efficient. Next, we can observe that many uranium-based recipes can only be crafted in centrifuges, and centrifuges have just 2 module slots. On top of that, most recipes have very long crafting times, and the famous Kovarex enrichment process disallows the use of quality modules completely, which leaves, in my opinion, just 2 valid paths towards legendary uranium: brute force ore upcycling for U-238 and atomic bomb upcycling for U-235. This very basic ore upcycler produces roughly 110 U-238 per hour, while this atomic bomb upcycler produces roughly 100 U-235 per hour. But let's not cry over these numbers just yet. Instead, let's go back to our 3 use cases and take a closer look. First, we need to think about portable fission reactors. Let's assume that you want to build 24 legendary Spidertrons, which is, by the way, more than I have ever built in a single playthrough. You would need 48 portable fission reactors as ingredients for the Spidertrons, plus an additional one for each to power their equipment grid, which makes 72 in total. Let's further assume that you want to equip 3 reactors by yourself, which brings the total number to 75. Now what's your guess? How much uranium do you think you would need? Well, you would need 300 uranium fuel cells, which require a total of 15 U-235 and 285 U-238. Yeah, that's right, 15 and 285. And you're done for a whole playthrough. So we don't need to worry about our first use case, it's basically free. Next, let's think about the legendary captive biter spawners. They cost a hefty 15 legendary U-235 each, and on top of that, they require 10 legendary biter eggs. But they do not produce legendary biter eggs, just normal quality ones. The only benefit they offer is a 2.5 times faster production rate for the same amount of food. Legendary biter spawners produce 75 eggs per bioflux compared to 30 for normal quality ones. Unless you build something specific, they're not necessary and way overpriced. I've only built them very rarely myself and sometimes even regretted wasting my precious legendary biter eggs on them. Just think of it, you can either get the aforementioned 24 legendary Spidertrons or 1 measly legendary biter spawner. So we also don't need to worry about this use case, it's of questionable value. Which leaves the legendary biolabs, and those are relatively cheap with just 3 legendary U-235 each. If you want to consume a full belt of 240 science packs per second, you need 66 legendary biolabs. And 66 legendary biolabs cost 198 legendary U-235. Remember how this design produces 100 of those per hour? It takes just 2 hours to get enough uranium to consume a whole belt of science packs. But I didn't yet mention that you will also need 660 legendary biter eggs for the biolabs. So what do you think the hard part is? Right, it's the biter eggs. Plus of course building the production lines for 240 of each science pack. That's why we also don't need to worry about this use case of uranium. It's dwarfed by everything else. And all of this means that we shouldn't overthink the upcycling. I tried different methods in the past, upcycling nuclear fuel or adding quality modules to various stages of the initial uranium ore processing, yada yada yada. In the end, it all didn't matter. Atomic bombs are just my friends. Same goes for the U-238. This simple ore upcycler takes less than 2 hours to provide enough fuel cells for a whole playthrough. So why overcomplicate it? Let me quickly go through the designs because there are some things to consider. First, let's talk about the actual location of your uranium ore patch. This depends a bit on your map generation settings and seed, but if you're lucky, it's relatively close by and you can run a belt from the patch to where you want to build the upcyclers. Although for the ore upcycler, it's not really important to have it close by. In one of my playthroughs, I built it on a uranium patch far away and provided the sulfuric acid locally. Just look for a uranium patch that has water, oil and iron ore nearby. But if you have a uranium ore patch close to your base, you can combine both upcyclers and won't need to destroy as much normal quality ore. To set up the ore upcycler, I first provide a full belt of uranium ore in mixed qualities. I use miners with quality modules, but also add beacons with single speed modules. This greatly increases the mining speed while still having an 18.75% chance to get higher quality ore. The normal quality ore is considered junk and either voided with 2 kissing recyclers or fed into the main uranium line for the base. All higher quality ore is then belted to a row of recycling machines, which also have quality modules. Finally, I filter out any legendary uranium ore and process it in a centrifuge with productivity modules. Now let's get to the U-235. In order to produce 100 of those per hour, we need to provide 150 raw normal quality ore per second. If your base heavily relies on nuclear power, you might want to add some more on top. I first set up a very simple uranium processing array. To save on productivity modules and beacons, I recommend using legendary centrifuges. 8 of them are enough to process all the ore. I use filtered stack inserters to output the 2 different isotopes onto a belt. The output belt then splits into one line for U-235, which goes up, and another one for U-238, which continues in this direction. But first I remember to add a small buffer chest for U-238 here, so my nuclear power plants don't run out of fuel cells. I had this happen before in a playthrough after refactoring this very exact module. Next, I add my second subfactory for the Kovarex enrichment process here. Since Kovarex is notoriously slow, I need a total of 14 legendary centrifuges with productivity modules and speed beacons. If I strategically place these 2 U-235 inserters next to each other, I can reduce the belt traffic by 96% because the second inserter will pull most of the items immediately back into the centrifuge. The outputs are then routed back to the start, where I connect them to the existing splitter and give them input priority. And lastly, I seed the build by providing enough U-235 from my storage and watch it come to life. Now let's continue with the actual upcycling. I first add a splitter here to keep my storage filled and prevent another planet-wide blackout. The rest can be spent on atomic bombs. I add 2 legendary assembling machines with quality modules for normal quality atomic bombs, with the requester chest as buffer in between them. There I request the blue chips and explosives. I tunnel the uranium with an underground belt and feed it into the requester chest with a limit of 200. Next I add 3 more assembling machines for green, blue and purple quality atomic bombs. I then add output inserters with optional memory cells to keep track of what has been produced. The outputs are then belted to a single recycling machine with quality modules. Whatever ingredients the recycler returns will go into a chest and then onto a belt. I first filter out any legendary items, which can be U-235, blue chips or explosives. For all 3 of those I add storage chests. By the way, in none of my playthroughs have I ever used the legendary explosives for anything. You might as well destroy them with the recycler. Next I bring the return belt back to the assembling machines. First I filter out normal quality items to the requested chest. Then I route green quality items into yet another buffer chest here. And lastly I handle blue and purple quality items with 2 final buffer chests. Let me hop into the editor and start a 10-hour benchmark. With the game speed set to 64x, this should only take a few real-life minutes. If I now open the production graph and filter for legendary quality, we can see the U-235 arriving in batches of 25. That's because a single atomic bomb requires 100 U-235 and the recycler returns 25% of its ingredients. So whenever the quality gamble procs legendary, we get exactly 25 legendary U-235. We can also see the occasional gap where we get nothing, sometimes for more than an hour. This is due to the low throughput of the design and the probabilistic nature of the quality gamble. But over time and with a large enough sample size, it will eventually average out to around 100 legendary uranium per hour. That's everything you need to know about legendary uranium. And while I consider legendary carbon fiber to be annoying, I'm indifferent towards uranium. It just exists, I guess. But with today's design done, we can continue with something very exciting next time. I'm really looking forward to my next video, which I've been working on for quite some time now. So stay tuned. You can find the blueprint of the designs in the video description. If you liked this content, please leave a like and hit subscribe. Thanks and bye.